CGTN, China Global Television Network. Live from London, this is The World Today.
Hello, I'm Jamie Owen. Welcome to the programme. Our top stories: Israel says its forces have now entered the heart of Gaza City as thousands flee the north of the enclave. Meanwhile, the United States weighs in on post-war outcomes.
The United States believes key elements should include no forcible displacement of Palestinians from Gaza. Not now, not after the war.
The opening bell rings. Ukraine is a step closer to joining the European Union as Brussels recommends membership talks. And a galaxy of treasures for movie collectors. Famous memorabilia up for grabs in London, expected to fetch stratospheric prices. The Israeli army says thousands of people have left northern Gaza following its latest evacuation announcement. A road was opened for a few hours for residents to move to the south of the Palestinian enclave. Israeli forces say they have now entered the heart of Gaza City and have killed a senior Hamas weapons maker and several fighters. The Palestinian Red Crescent says all roads to one of Gaza's biggest hospitals have been closed due to the bombardment. This comes after the International Red Cross said one of its aid convoys came under attack on Tuesday. Well, let's talk to our correspondent, Noor Harazin, in Gaza. Noor, first of all, these claims that ambulances are being blocked from leaving the Al-Quds hospital. We may not be through to our correspondent, Noor Harazin. We may come back to her a little later in the programme, but in the meantime, we'll carry on with the rest of today's news. And G7 foreign ministers have pressed for humanitarian pauses in the fighting in Gaza, but stopped short of calling for a ceasefire. At a summit in Tokyo, US Secretary of State Antony Blinken appeared to respond to recent comments by the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu by saying there should be no long-term Israeli occupation of Gaza.
What I've heard from Israeli leaders is that they have no intent to reoccupy Gaza and retake control of Gaza. So the only question is there some transition period that might be necessary, and what might be the mechanisms that you could put in place for that to make sure that there is security.
Well, let's see if we can talk to our correspondent, Sarah Coates, in Tel Aviv. Sarah, how will those comments from the United States Secretary of State be viewed and received in Israel?
Hello there, Jamie. Look, we can certainly expect quite a lot of people on Israel's far right to be pushing back against these comments by Antony Blinken. We do know these are the people that are pro-settlement in the West Bank, pro-expansion, pro-pushing Palestinians out of their land. But look, the general feeling that I get here on the ground after speaking to so many people is, while they want to change the status quo October 7 and make sure that Hamas is not in control of the Gaza Strip anymore, they do not agree a lot of the time with Benjamin Netanyahu and his comments. They do not trust him. They want to see him out. So, look, they are most likely to be agreeing there with Secretary of State Blinken and backing him up, saying that Israel should not be occupying the Gaza Strip. So, look, we did hear Netanyahu's senior advisor coming out on the back of that interview that Netanyahu gave. He said, we have to distinguish between a security presence and political control, saying that there's no point in doing all of this and then going back to square one. So we're still yet to hear reaction coming in after Blinken's speech. But look, certainly, as I said, many on the right will surely be opposing it, while the majority of people here on the ground will likely agree with him.
And how significant is it for Israel to hear of this killing of this top Hamas figure?
Very significant. Mohsen Abu Zina, he is the one that Israel accuses of being behind the rockets manufacturing rocket scheme there in the Gaza Strip, the one that Israel says has been in charge of firing these thousands and thousands of rockets into Israel. But look, the one with the X on his back, the most wanted man in Israel, that is 61-year-old Yahya Sinwar. He is the head of Hamas in the Gaza Strip. The Israeli military says they have now surrounded him in his underground bunker. And look, it hasn't given any further detail away as to when they might potentially capture him and what would actually happen. But the Israeli military has been saying over the last few days and the last few years, really, that he is a dead man walking. So look, if indeed the military does carry out its objective to what they say is eliminate Sinwar, it would certainly have some reverberations around the Middle East and potentially see some sort of a heavy response from Hezbollah in Israel's north, which does continue to fire into Israel from that northern border. So look, I'm sure we'll hear more about this in the coming hours.
Sarah, thank you for that. Our correspondent Sarah Coates in Tel Aviv. Israeli security sources have told the Reuters news agency that disabling Hamas tunnels is a fundamental part of the next phase of this war and will take time. Let's talk to Colin Clark, Director of Policy and Research at the Soufan Group, a private intelligence firm. Colin, good to see you. Welcome. First of all, what preparations is the Israeli military likely to be undertaking ahead of this, as they call it, next stage of its war against Hamas?
Yeah, what we're seeing right now, what I would call an encirclement strategy. So the Israelis attempting to surround Gaza City, doing short, kind of penetrating, ambush-style incursions. But what we're seeing as well in terms of counterinsurgency is the clear stage of what's typically clear, hold, and build. Although, as Secretary Blinken mentioned, there's little intention to actually build. They won't be occupying Gaza once the conflict winds down.
This is a conflict watched on social media, quite difficult for the layman to understand and engage with. I mean, talk us through the key challenges that the Israeli army faces while trying to fight Hamas on the ground.
Yeah, well, we're talking about fighting in what we call dense urban environments, which is among the most difficult types of combat that militaries have engaged in historically, whether it's Grozny in Chechnya, as the Russians found out, or as the United States found out in Mosul against the Islamic State. There's a number of challenges that go along with this, including, militants hiding in the rubble, using tunnels, improvised explosive devices, and also bringing with that kind of more modern tech, including drones. So combining old school with new school to make a really difficult fight for the Israelis in the days and weeks ahead.
Hezbollah warning of this spiraling into a wider regional war. Will it?
Well, it could. It very well could. And, that's one of the reasons the U.S. has brought so much military hardware in the region. As a deterrent, not only to Hezbollah, but to Hezbollah's, sponsor, Iran. So this is a clear warning to the Iranians to stand down. However, Iranian proxies, as we've seen, including Iraqi Shia militia groups, have continued to fire missiles and rockets. The Houthis in Yemen have done the same. And so all it takes is one small miscalculation. If U.S. personnel is killed, that could really up the ante, and we could be on our way toward a broader regional conflagration.
What timeline would you say we're looking at? I mean, how long do you think this war is going to last?
It's really difficult to say. In my own research, we looked at 71 insurgencies from the end of World War II to 2009. The median length was 10 years, right? Some lasted 30, some lasted a couple of months. It could be anywhere in that range. My sense, given the diplomatic pressure that's being applied, the United States is really investing a lot of resources in attempting to negotiate some kind of a humanitarian pause and ceasefire. I'm hoping this winds down in weeks, but it could very well go much longer.
Colin, good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed for coming on the programme. Colin Clark, Director of Policy and Research at the Soufan Group, talking to us from Washington. I want to see if we can take you back to Gaza now and talk to our correspondent, Noor Harazin. I think we may have had her and lost her again, but we will try once again to take you back to Gaza before the end of this programme. China has sent humanitarian aid to Nepal as the country continues to grapple with the aftermath of the deadly earthquake. 2 military aircraft carrying around 50 tons of relief are due to arrive today, carrying supplies including tents and blankets. At least 153 people were killed and more than 339 injured when the earthquake struck last week, Nepal's worst since 2015. Nearly half of Australia lost all communication services earlier on Wednesday. Around 10 million customers of the telecoms firm Optus were unable to use smartphones, broadband or landlines. Transport, payment and health systems were thrown into chaos for more than 12 hours before systems were restored. So far, there's been no explanation for the failure. You're watching CGTN. Still ahead, Ukraine's bid for EU integration passes a major milestone as officials say membership talks should begin. We're in Brussels next.
Ever wondered what's the difference between a bear and a bull market? Where are the cash cows? And who are the lame ducks? And what exactly are black swans? Grey rhinos? And unicorn companies? Make sense of it all with Global Business, only on CGTN.
I think it should be more global cooperation.
I would like to hear more the voice of the developing countries.
Globalization has lifted more than 1 billion people out of poverty.
The green transition has to happen. So it's a necessity.
Well, China and the United States are important powers in the world.
What unites us is much more than what divides us. And I believe China is committed to this agenda.
Join me, Juliet Mann, to set the agenda at these times every weekend on CGTN.
Events have consequences. Words create impact.
One more offensive in a long line of battles that's been ongoing for more.
Just got to be careful here with some gunshots. Excuse us.
The world today matters for your world tomorrow.
The number of casualties is growing quickly.
Why, this is one of the hardest hit towns in the region.
The world today, every day on CGTN.
Hello, welcome back. A reminder of our top story. Israel says its forces have now entered the heart of Gaza City as thousands of people flee the north of the enclave. Ukraine says Russia is stepping up attacks on the country's power grid before the onset of winter. Kyiv's energy minister says electricity infrastructure has been attacked 60 times in recent weeks. Last year, thousands of Russian drones and missiles targeted Ukraine's power sector, causing blackouts. Meanwhile, G7 foreign ministers have reiterated their support for Ukraine at a meeting in Japan. Well, Ukraine has cleared a major hurdle in its ambitions to join the European Union, with the bloc recommending the commencement of membership talks. European Council President Ursula von der Leyen says Kyiv is taking steps to reform its governance.
Ukraine has completed, I was there over the weekend and could convince myself, well over 90% of the necessary steps that we set out last year in our report.
Well, let's talk to our correspondent Alex Cadier in Brussels. Alex, what do these recommendations from EU officials really mean?
Well, it means that talks can start in earnest. The member states, now the Commission, we just heard from Ursula von der Leyen, the EU Commission President, the Commission has recommended some changes by Ukraine. 90%, as Ursula von der Leyen just said, of those recommendations have been met. And now it's over to the member states to go down to the nitty-gritty of actually making sure that both they and Ukraine are ready for membership. It also means that the Commission is now satisfied that those conditions have broadly been met. That means implementing reforms to their public administration, their judiciary, their economy in order to align with the EU. Now, those negotiations with the member states are helpfully divided into 35 different chapters or topics. Very clearly, that includes issues from foreign policy to economic reform to making sure that Ukraine is ready to deal with both the market economy of the EU and some of the competitive forces that its economy will be faced with when it joins the European Union. So certainly a lot to go through, and it's a lot of very detailed, very technical negotiation, but it certainly means that Ukraine is going in the right direction. Let's give you a sense of timeline. Ursula von der Leyen not being drawn in by journalists at the press conference asking her, when will this happen? We know that the EU Council President Charles Michel has said the Union should be ready to accept new members by 2030. Some bids after these accession talks have started go very quickly. Finland only take 3 years, but Turkey, for example, has been in these talks since 2005. And the prospect of Turkey joining the EU seems pretty unlikely at this stage. So really it's a bit of a mishmash between how ready and willing Ukraine is to reform and how willing those EU member states are willing to accept it in the Union. So certainly a big step for Ukraine, but a lot of work left to do, Jamie.
And the EU also looking at progressing the accession or membership process for other countries.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Moldova also being given the same status as Ukraine, that accession talks can begin with the EU's 27 member states, saying that it had made progress in strengthening democracy and its justice system to be more in line with the European Union, but that more work is needed, particularly on reducing the influence and power of oligarchs in that country and as well reducing corruption across its political system. Georgia will also be granted candidate status, so that's one step behind. That's where Ukraine and Moldova were before this announcement. Well, Georgia will be given that status if it addresses some of the EU's concerns, particularly on democratic backsliding, on Russian influence, on disinformation in the country, and holds free and fair elections for the parliamentary elections next year. Bosnia, the other point, the Western Balkans, a very crucial region for the European Union. Accession negotiations can start once some of those conditions have also been met, notably on freedom of expression, freedom of the press, things that the EU has taken issue with in Bosnia in particular. Like, to summarise effectively what the EU position is on this, is Ursula von der Leyen saying that these countries have understood the call of history, that they have a choice if they want democracy and prosperity or autocratic regimes. It's very much a day of positivity for the European Union and its battle against Russia's sphere of influence.
Alex, thank you for that. Our correspondent, Alex Cadier in Brussels. Now, we've been trying to get a line through to Gaza. It's still a bit of a struggle, as you'll understand. But let's see if we can talk once again to our correspondent, Noor Harazin, who's there for us. Noor, let's first of all pick up on these claims that ambulances are being blocked from leaving the Al-Quds hospital. Have you heard any more on that? What more do we know?
Well, here is what happened to Al-Quds Hospital. Al-Quds Hospital is located in a neighborhood called Tal al-Hawa, and this neighborhood is located in southern Gaza City. So this neighborhood actually over the past week have been under heavy Israeli strikes, heavy Israeli shelling. Now all the buildings and the towers, residential towers, all the places surrounding this hospital are now totally destroyed, even the streets. So yes, the ambulances are blocked. They cannot leave the Al-Quds Hospital. They cannot even reach the Al-Quds Hospital if you're talking about ambulances going going to Al-Quds Hospital. Actually, we're talking about more than 14,000 people that are taking shelter inside this hospital, adding to the fact that there is more than 400 patients that are staying in the hospital. All of these people are for now imprisoned actually inside the Al-Quds Hospital, as there is no more roads that leads to Al-Quds Hospital anymore.
And what of Israel's claims that we've been hearing that the Hamas weapons maker is among the dead?
Well, Mohsen Abu Zaina is a leader in Hamas. He's actually a big leader in Hamas. Israel claims that they targeted what they call his storage for weapons, and that he was killed in this airstrike. However, here on the ground, the Palestinian medical sources, they said nothing about the incident. But the people on the ground, and after hearing this news coming from the Israeli, they are waiting on Abu Ubaida's televised statement actually this evening, hopefully this evening. Maybe Abu Ubaida, who is the spokesperson of Al-Qassam, the militant wing of Hamas, will talk about this.
And let's talk about civilians in all of this. What about people trying to leave Gaza? Do they have safe passage?
Well, actually, I was there today. I visited the Salah ad-Din street, and we saw thousands of people, thousands of families taking that road coming from northern Gaza. Spoke to a number of these people. They've described it as one of the hardest things that they were forced actually to do, because many of them said that they did not want to leave their homes, but because of the latest Israeli leaflets on Ashata refugee camp and on people still residing in northern Gaza, the Israeli army was saying in these leaflets that if you are still residing in Gaza, we will consider you not a civilian anymore, and actually you cooperating with the terrorists, meaning Hamas. So the people actually were forced to leave their homes for safety and for their lives. They said that they had to take 2 hours from Al-Kuwait street to Al-Bureij refugee.
I think we're going to leave that there. That was Noor Harazin in Gaza, and I think we got the gist of what she was saying. My apologies for the quality of the line there from Gaza. China says it's ready to strengthen talks with the United States at all levels and work together on global challenges. Speaking at an economic forum in Singapore, China's vice president says recent high-level meetings between Beijing and Washington have shown positive signs. This comes as China's vice premier begins his visit to the United States, where he's expected to meet the Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen. 2023 is virtually certain to be the hottest year on record. Europe's climate change service, Copernicus, is reporting exceptionally high temperatures in October. This follows heat records in September and in July, which is thought to have been the world's hottest month in 120,000 years. 2023 is predicted to be 1.4 degrees warmer than pre-industrial levels between 1850 to 1900. And the United Nations says governments are on track to produce double the amount of fossil fuels by 2030, exceeding the 1.5 degrees Celsius warming limit set in the 2015 Paris Climate Agreement. The report by the UN Environment Programme profiled 20 fossil fuel-producing countries, including India, Saudi Arabia and Russia. It said 17 have pledged to reduce net zero emissions, but most continue to promote, subsidise, support and plan the expansion of fossil fuels. Well, California has been on the forefront of green policies in the United States. The state has been hit by wildfires and drought, and water levels in lakes are receding. Our correspondent Alistair Baverstock reports.
60 kilometres from Palm Springs is the Salton Sea, a body of water greatly transformed in recent decades.
Once a popular desert oasis getaway, the Salton Sea, actually an inland lake, has been heavily impacted by climate change. Receding water levels and drought have led to harsh dust storms and worsening pollution, making life here significantly harder for the marginalised communities that live on its shores.
Jesus Perez has seen conditions change significantly since his family moved here in the 1990s.
Well, it's been really rough lately. We've been getting a lot of the salt flying all over. My kids, they have an allergic reaction towards it when it comes summertime. All the stench from the dead fish and all that is still going on. And I've been hearing from local news from LA saying that they've been getting the stench all the way over there as well too.
For the local authorities, it's a worsening issue. Christina Sutton works in Salton City's local government.
We've had dust storms where you can't see 2 feet in front of you for a sustained amount of period of time. The air quality, very, very poor. Kids out here are developing more asthma and respiratory issues. The more that dries up, the worse our air is out here.
Indeed, with no signs of climate change slowing down, local officials have a bleak outlook on what's ahead for the communities here.
I don't know, 10, 20 years? This is the most inexpensive place to live in California. They don't care about the small kids or the low-income people and their air quality. They don't care about that.
Alistair Baberstock, CGTN, Salton City, California.
How much would you pay to own a piece of film history? Demand for famous props and costumes has risen sharply in recent years, with collectors paying out huge sums. More movie memorabilia is going under the hammer in London this week, including items from Star Wars, Indiana Jones and The Godfather. Our correspondent John Beaver reports.
Instantly iconic and immediately recognisable, from the latest blockbusters to much-loved favourites from decades gone by. There's a thriving market in movie props, costumes and memorabilia, but nostalgia doesn't come cheap.
Two of the most popular lots in the auction are expected to be C-3PO's helmet and a TIE Fighter helmet from the original 1977 Star Wars. And if you want to get your hands on one of these two, you're going to need deep pockets. Starting bid somewhere in the region of $600,000 and $350,000.
They're being sold by Prop Store, who have offices in both the UK and Los Angeles. The founder and CEO describes his job as a hobby that's spiralled out of control. Prices have done the same. Some items are available for regular purchase, but it's the high-profile auctions where collectors part with huge sums of money for a piece of movie history.
And so I think what we're actually seeing is just an emerging marketplace, and a marketplace that's starting to mature, that is reaching those levels where there is that level of awareness. There's more material now in the mix. The internet sounds very cliched, but being able to reach people and explain to them. And you put all that together and then look at some of the exciting things that we're discovering, and that just draws more and more people into the hobby.
Just like in antiques or art, forgeries and fakes are something that auctioneers are very aware of. For items that have been on screen, going through films frame by frame helps tie them to their moment in the spotlight.
Okay, so this is what we call a screen-matched item. So this is a situation where you can freeze frame the film and match unique patterns, because every garment is going to be slightly different. It's going to be constructed in a slightly different way, even though they kind of appear the same. So the markings of the stitching and the pattern on here is going to be unique. And in one scene of The Big Lebowski, you can freeze frame it and you can match up every single detail on this garment, and you know this is the one he wore in that scene.
There are just under 2,000 lots up for auction. They're expecting to make at least $14 million, but it could be significantly more. In a digital world, people are spending fortunes on tangible objects from a long time ago. John Beaver, CGTN, in a warehouse far, far away.
And that is The World Today. Thank you for watching. We're back with more news at the top of this hour. Coming up next, it's World Insight. For now, from all of the team in London, it's goodbye.